On a hill outside Jerusalem called Golgotha, the air is heavy with hopelessness and despair. Against the afternoon sky, three men hung up on wooden crosses. On the middle cross is Jesus of Nazareth, his body battered and broken with the merciless scourging he endured at the hands of those who had condemned him. The crowds gathered around, their voices echoed shouts of mockery and scorn as they hurled insults and jeers at him. Yet, even in the midst of their ruthless cries, Jesus offers words of forgiveness and grace. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And as the hours pass, darkness falls over the hill, and Jesus speaks the words, "It is finished." He bows his head, dies, and surrenders his spirit to the Father. The earth trembles and quakes. One might ask the question, what is so good about Good Friday? About Good Friday. Now, let me ask that question one more time. What is so good about Good Friday? After all, Jesus was betrayed by one of his fellow followers in ministry. He was later arrested, tried, and convicted of a crime that he was not guilty of. Matter of fact, the only thing that Jesus was guilty of was being a lover of the children of God, the people of God, healing the sick, and speaking truth to power. He was mocked, he was shamed, he was beaten, later crucified. He was killed in one of the most horrific ways that humanity can imagine killing someone. Nailed to a cross and hung until he died on that cross. It's hard for me to even imagine today. But we know that it happened. But if that wasn't enough, he dies, and people then cast lots or gamble for his clothes. And finally, after his death, and they prepare to bury him, but there's no tomb for him to be buried in. So he has to borrow a tomb. Well, I still find it difficult to find anything good about Good Friday. People then suffered moral failure. People then, those who were in power, were still railing their power and passing injustice. Justice was a failure. Religious folk still suffered spiritual problems. When I look back over the events then, look at the events now, I still believe that not much has changed. People today are still suffering from moral failure, suffering from ethical failure, suffering from religious failure, suffering from justice failure. People are still suffering from failure today, just as they were back then. Matter of fact, it hasn't been too long since we came out of the pandemic that reeled across the world. I'm talking about COVID-19. It is in our very recent past. And matter of fact, even today, some people are still being affected by the virus, COVID-19. But I say we're still dealing with a pandemic, a virus that is plaguing our nation. It is the virus that I call the isms: sexism, classism, racism. It is still plaguing our nation, the isms. So I ask the question, what is it that is so good about Good Friday? We're still dealing with what I call religionism. We can be so religious, but not any earthly good. So what's so good about Good Friday? I know we'll be celebrating the resurrection in a few days. And that is good news. But what happened on Friday 2,000 years ago? Was that good? Well, I proclaim to you today that what the enemy means for bad, yes, God does take it and turn it around for good. Because just as we're dealing with failure then and dealing with failure now, every issue, every problem, every dis-ease, every moral, societal, and religious failure has been then and is now nailed to the cross. When power misuses power to benefit the few at the expense of the masses, yes, it has been nailed to the cross. When the judicial system is grossly biased and inequitable, especially for those who are poor and people of color, it has been nailed to the cross. When racism and classism are used to divide rather than to unite, it has been nailed to the cross. Matter of fact, tell somebody it has been nailed to the cross. Proclaim by faith with me, it has been nailed to the cross. When dollars for public education is reallocated to fund private education for the wealthy, it too has been nailed to the cross. When we think about the wealth gap getting wider, we understand that it has been nailed to the cross. The rich keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poor, and those in between, the middle class is, yes, shrinking, but it has too been nailed to the cross. I want you to say it with me. It has been nailed to the cross. The debate over national health care. How dare we debate over whether or not every person should have equitable, affordable health care? Should we debate over whether or not people deserve clean water? Should we debate that people should have clean air to breathe? Should we debate that people should have enough food to feed their families? Should we debate if every person's life is necessary? Should we debate whether or not people should have the basic necessities for life? Should we debate on whether or not some person is legal or illegal, whether they are alien or not alien? I mean, after all, the word alien alludes to someone who is not of this world. But yet, when people migrate from other countries, mainly because of problems that we in the United States have caused, we want to call them other and say migration is a problem when people have migrated over the years for centuries. That's what people do. People migrate. We migrated here to the United States, some willingly, some forcibly, but nevertheless, we yet migrated. When we want to call right wrong and wrong right, yes, we have a problem, but that problem too has been nailed to the cross. And while we ask the question, what is so good about Good Friday? Because we understand that when people go against the status quo, they are subject to be nailed to the proverbial cross. Preachers, as long as we preach a good sermon on Sunday that tickle the ears of the people and don't make people feel uncomfortable or make any waves, get a few people saved and get bigger buildings and get more money in, but yet still people are brokenhearted, yet still people are needing to be set free, yet still people are needing to be delivered, healed. Their minds still need to be regulated. But as long as we make them feel good, we won't get crucified and be nailed to the cross, that proverbial cross. But I still tell you today, it is good to preach to the brokenhearted. It is still good to preach that people, the captives, will be set free. It is still good to proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord. It is still good to call sin, sin, and to declare that people need to be set free, even if it means being crucified. But even as this message comes forth, people of color especially are being disproportionately affected by diabetes, chronic diseases, dying of disproportionate rates of all kinds of illnesses, lack of food, sources in their neighborhoods, living in food deserts, mass incarceration, called the modern day slave trade. So, when I think about Good Friday, I wonder if we could call it something else. Maybe like what the Germans called it, Sorrowful Friday. Or looking back, maybe we go back to the old English and saying good, saying God Friday, because God is still in control. Because regardless of the origin of the name, Good Friday, we do understand that Good Friday had to come, or Friday had to come, in order for Sunday's resurrection. In order for Jesus to be resurrected, he had to suffer the death on the cross. God has a way of turning what the enemy means for bad for our good, because Jesus' death on the cross marked the dramatic culmination of God's plan to save God's people, not just from sin, but to save us from ourselves. You see, Jesus, the Savior of the world, not just for some, but for everyone, had a way of speaking to the ills of the world then and to the ills of the world today. And while it's not the first time, but on that Friday, Jesus spoke to power and reminded power that it had no power over him. He proclaimed that all power of heaven and in earth belonged to him. Today, I stand here and I boldly proclaim that every issue, every problem, every disease, every virus, every ism, racism, sexism, classism, Jesus the Christ, the Lord of Lords, the King of Kings, the way maker, the deliverer, the sovereign Savior, the all-powerful one, the first, the last, the beginning and the end, the one who has only been nailed to the cross, took everything to the cross with him. So when he was nailed to the cross, so was every issue also nailed to the cross. And then Jesus hung his head, and before he died, he said, "It is finished." Tell somebody, it is finished. It is finished. 3 words. It is finished. In the Greek, it is one word, telelos, meaning that something has been completed, the completion of a transaction, that every agreement that was needed, in which was needed to be achieved, it was done on the cross. And that gives us cause for celebration, turning our sorrow into gladness. So, what is so good about Good Friday? Deliverance happened on Good Friday. Freedom happened on Good Friday. Liberty happened on Good Friday, not just in past tense, but my liberty and your liberty, my freedom and your freedom, my deliverance and your deliverance is right now. It is finished. Tell somebody that's close to you, it's finished. Matter of fact, prophesy to your own self. It is finished. It is finished. It has already been done. So I don't know what you're going through, but I can tell you that Jesus Christ has finished the work that was necessary for you on the cross. It is finished. So proclaim it by faith, walk in it, live in it, declare it for your life, that every problem that you're dealing with, every issue that you're struggling with, everything that you need healing from, God has already taken care of it in the finished work of Jesus Christ on the cross. So today, we celebrate Good Friday because we know that Resurrection Sunday is coming.
Jesus.